for the Arts Festival Summit 2022 in Yerevan, Armenia. Hosted by the Yerevan Perspective International Music Festival. More info on EFA's website.
So, do we have everybody? Anybody else in the dining place? Oh, thank you. So, welcome, one and all, to the session I call it Through the Looking Glass. After the second book of Alice in Wonderland, I often think of festival, I often try to objectify a festival in order to understand the ethos and the context of a festival. And whenever someone asks me, what is a festival for you, I'm either referring to Bruegel's Tower of Babel or the book of Alice in Wonderland. So further on, I will talk about why I decided to choose the framework of Alice in Wonderland for this session. So this session is about, the short name for it would be EFA, Meet the Festivals from the Region. And I would like you to learn about the narrative of the region, about the stories that are happening and emerging in this region. Can we go to the second? The subtitle for this session is also Through the Looking Glass, or the second page, please. Ah, okay. What we find about the others, ourselves, or the continuous segregation dilemma, because we want it or do not want it, segregation exists. So what I wrote for this session on that you can read about it in the website is that 2 months from now it would be the next anniversary of the biggest wall in the human history, in the cultural, socio-political history that divided nations, peoples, families, brothers and sisters and lovers. Almost 35 years after the collapse of the war, we still have that segregation, not objectively, but subjectively. So can we go to the next page, please? I would like you, first of all, I didn't want any paper for this session, so I almost fought with Catherine and Gert about not printing anything for this session, because if we truly believe sustainability and we talk about ecological anything, we begin from here. So there wouldn't be any papers, but I would like to ask you to scan this QR code with your phones. I have 2 questions to ask from you. You would find the questions here, and then after that, I'm going to give you 2 minutes to answer those questions, very short questions. And I only need 1 word from you. So when you scan this QR code, you will be directed to Mentimeter website. I would like to ask you, please, to answer those questions with 1 word only. And then we would see the results on screen. Thank you. Let me know if there was anything wrong with the link or the questions. Does everybody have the questions? Do we need to fill in 3 words? Or? 1 word. If it's 3 words, then it was my mistake putting.
What is the region?
I need to, because it was too long for this. So the region I'm talking about is Caucasian area, but not necessarily Caucasian area. This area that you are in is both Caucasia, Mesopotamia, and Persian Plateau. So it includes Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Syria, Iraq, Iran, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and also Ukraine. So this is the region that I need to know. What's the first word that comes to your mind? Yes. Sorry? Now we have the Ukrainian table for this session, so I'm also including Ukraine. So I'm mainly curious about what's your insight. Try it. You're creative people. I'm sure you can.
No, but that's inappropriate, actually, to combine all these countries in one.
Just take one. Yeah. Just take in consideration, I don't know, Afghanistan, Syria. If you're not comfortable with the region, so please take 1 country and then write 1 word that comes to your mind when you first think about that country. Yeah.
You cannot specify the word we are choosing for which country, because if you have translator reaching,
We're gonna talk about it.
Do we submit after we put our word? Or do we submit or do we enter the
Yes, please. And there would be a second question also about the same thing that I talked about, Bruegels and Alice. So what is the first word that comes to your mind if you want to objectify a festival or your festival as a piece of art? It could be painting, it could be sculpture, it could be David's sculpture, it could be anything. What is that piece of art or literature that comes to your mind with it? It should be loaded. Can we also refresh the page? There was a gum on this. Jesus. History, homeland, identity, danger, that's the word I was looking for. Imperialism, culture, history, conflict, war, colonized, dry soil. Perfect words for my purpose, thank you. Politics, difficult, dust, injustice, Orient, Armenia, regional conflicts, thank you. Stability. Stability? Sustainability. The S is missing. Faded, perfect. Silk Road. Borders, vine, east. Freedom, I'm wondering who wrote Freedom about this region. Europe, how come you're considering Europe as in this region? Heritage, ancient. So, are we finished? Everybody answered? Perfect. Can we go to the second question on the Mentimeter, please? Did you also answer the second question? Through the same link, it will go to the second question. I think this is for the previous question, Peter.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, what do you mean? Is it we respond to an art piece?
What do you mean by collective being? What do you mean?
So, well, often we think about a festival as a living being, or at least some people, or as a collective being, as something that is being done collectively. Mm-hmm. So if you think of a festival as a living being, as a collective piece, if you believe in that or not, doesn't matter. What kind of art piece does it remind you of? It's multidisciplinary. We're talking about multi-genre. So what I talked in the beginning was that for me, a festival, if it's a painting, it would be Bruegel's Tower of Babel. And if it's a book, a literary piece, it would be Alice in Wonderland. So I want to know, what is it for you? Ai Weiwei. Bore de Raver. The Shams Toilet. I love you, whoever wrote this. Total Theatre, Opera, Mount Olympus, Mosaic, Accordion. Ode to Joy, wow. Wiegeland, that's a Dutch. Wiegeland Anleg, I hope I pronounce it right. Symphony, College, Masterpieces. Well, it's not exactly, I mean, the Duchamp's Toilet is closest, and also Ode to Joy to what I wanted you to write, rather than writing holistic words like movie or masterpieces. What I'm focusing on in this session is about putting aside the meta-narratives. I'm talking about local narratives, personal narratives that you want. So that is the whole purpose of this session. Network. Guernica, perfect. The darker it is, the more happier I get. Wagner. Are we gonna have Heidegger as well now that we have Wagner? Akram Khan. Oh, interesting. Although I consider him among the white privileged directors. Collage. Wirtschaftswege. Bejar Ballet Lausanne. And then we have the something like with Huiz, it's a French or something. Coulos. This I cannot read. Ah. Is it French or Dutch or? Thank you. I will search about him. So I think enough with the game. We can continue the session. Can we go to the PowerPoint, please? So now the serious part. Stories matter, or at least that's how I was raised and grew up from the context that I live in. So the purpose of this session, when Catherine invited me to curate this session in the first place, was to, no, we should go to the previous, the Stories Matter still. Audrey. Yeah, so she asked me to design a session that could bring the narratives and stories of the people in this region that we are visiting for the people who are attending, which is very important because often we do not know the whole narrative, we do not know the whole story behind an incident, about a crisis, about the danger that you wrote about this region. And we always hear about them through unilateral mass media that are feeding us on their own point of view. So like what Shahidul Alam was saying about changing the narrative in their exhibition, this is what's happening to us in the world. And what I want to tell you is that I'm going to tell you a couple of anecdotes about my observations within the past 3 days, and then we will move on with the session. So one thing that really moved me was that 2 nights ago we were in this tavern Yerevan for food and lovely music. And when the music was cheering you up and making you happy and making you feeling, wow, such a rich music, it was cringing my heart, it was tightening my heart as if somebody is sawing, like the movie Saw, my heart to pieces. And why? Because I was seeing elements of Armenian music in that, Iranian instrument in that, Azerbaijani tonality in that, Georgian words in that, something that maybe for some of you is hidden, something that maybe for some of you is not visible, who are not from this region or who are not experts from this region. And that was tearing my heart apart. Why? Because this region used to be a safe region. This region used to be brothers, sisters, lovers, friends, until the Western colonization or Eastern imperialism came to this region, torn it apart, and made all of these brothers and lovers and sisters apart from each other while they are still sharing the same elements in their music, in their food, in their dolma, and anything else that you can see during these couple of days. So I'm very sorry that we cannot have the whole region for socio-political reasons, stupid, crazy, whatever you want to call it, crisis. So this is the first point. The second point, we talked about Ukraine and Russia in the past couple of days. How many of you, if you are following the news or the different narratives, how many of you knew that Lithuania canceled a package of COVID vaccines to Bangladesh because Bangladesh decided to abstain their vote in the General Assembly of UN against condemning Russia for the war that they rose on Ukraine? I'm not sure anybody learned about this. Is that really the best that you wanted to do during the past 2 years of talking about solidarity? That's really a shame, I'm sorry to say. If you're remaining silent about this, this is such a shame. And then you call this region danger, you call it dark, you call this crisis, you call this war. You called people from this region, from Syria, Iraq, Iran, Azerbaijan, Afghanistan, uncivilized. The reporters, your reporters, called us uncivilized. You dare coming to this region while remaining silent about your reporters calling us uncivilized. This region is one of the oldest regions, and it's one of the cradles of civilization in our history, in the history of the world. So this is, again, another shame if you remain silent about your reporters. And then this region, for those of you who are talking about equality, equality comes from the language, from the culture that you are bringing. Gender equality, the same. This region, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Turkey, Georgia, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, our language has been the same gender-neutral language for 4,000 years. We had the equality from the beginning in our language, in our culture. I don't have anything to say about the patriotism that has shadowed this region for so many years against the language, the gender-neutral language that we have. But this is something that we want to share with you. Maybe you can begin from your language to bring equality. Thank you. And let's go to the next slide. So I'm going to do some acknowledgements that I actually learned from my very good friends from Europe who did this for facilitation, and I really loved what they did. English is the working language of this session. I know it might be uncomfortable for many of you, but we would like to continue with English. Do not assume. Please ask. Equity, gender neutral region, I told about you. Freedom of expression. We all make mistakes. We never know the whole story. I don't know the whole story. I didn't know the artist Yerevan wrote. Safe space to ask, learn, and mistake. This, if we cannot make this space a safe place to ask and learn and listen, then why do we even do festivals as a place for coexistence? Less paper. I didn't want any paper for this session. Be kind, polite, and patient to each other. I know all of us might have conflicts with each other. All of us might have different point of views. Don't interrupt each other. Ask. Be aware of where we are and the stories that I told you about. That is not the whole story. I don't know about the whole story. Artur knows about the whole a part of the story. Yerevan knows about. Say if you are not comfortable with something. Have compassion for difference. There's no other. It's always about us. Do not give in to the segregation. We will make mistakes, just apologize. Festivals as a collective work, not a solo. It's not about artistic directors of a festival. It's a collective thing. If you do not have any technician, if you do not have any budgeting manager or an executive manager, you cannot do the festival. So, can we go to the next slide, please? The session begins, the framework of Alice, I chose it because Alice in Wonderland is an invitation to multiple perspectives that are simultaneously conflicting. Alice in Wonderland is a network thinking to experiment. Alice in Wonderland is a familiar to explore the unfamiliar. Such is the context of you in this region, of all of us in this region. Shall we go to the next slide? So this session would be divided into 3 different working groups, here, there, and there. In each of the working groups, you have a beautiful bowl, a glass bowl filled with Iranian goods for you, so you can also eat during the talks. There are pistachios, dried sour fruits, candies, and also Iranian nougat with pistachio in it. We would begin the first conversations with these 4 questions, so if any of you want to take notes of it or take a photo with your phone, you can take it to your table. And then the table would include the contributors of the table, which the Armenian table would be Artur, if Sona and Ani are here also, and the Georgian table would be Yerevan, and the Ukrainian table would be Katerina, Anastasia, and Yurian. And you would be, and Martin as well. For Armenia. We have Martin for Armenia as well from Khachaturian Institute. And Ani. Masha for Ukraine. So these sessions would include these contributors along with Tom Inge and Tobile on behalf of the Festival Academy alumni. You would be talking about these questions, but these questions are only guidance. I know you might have much different questions. I tried my best to bring questions that I thought would be important to learn about this narrative of questions about this region. But please feel free to continue on your own questions and accord. And then we would have 3 different sets of 20-minute sessions. So now we would begin with 20 minutes. Then we would have 5 minutes of break. Then we would have another 20 minutes. Then 10 minutes of break. Then the last session for 20 minutes. The tables would be rotational, so feel free to change your table after the first table session that you have. And then, yeah. The expert changed the table, the people would remain the same.
Because one table is filmed, and so then the online people can see all experts once. So
yeah.
People can stay on the same circle, in the same circle. Just the experts, so the people from Ukraine, Georgia, and Armenia, they switch to another circle.
Also, you will move also with the, yeah. And that's it. Is there any question? Yeah.
Hi. Thank you for your presentation. And you know that I'm from Ukraine, so I will be commenting from our part. So first of all, what I want to point that you naming all these countries and saying all the time this region, it's for a reason that there is no name for this region because it's not one region, because context is absolutely different, the countries are really different. And also I want to mention that, unfortunately for me, comparison with, and the name of this session about Alice in Wonderland, it's absolutely inappropriate because it's a fairy tale. And you know that in Ukraine, thousands of people has died, civilians and military people. And they are still dying right now. And you probably know that in Armenia, yesterday, 50, I guess, people died also. And for me, it looks, this comparison with Alice in Wonderland, who goes to a wonderland and then comes back to reality. It looks like people from wealthy countries in the European Union, they come to an interesting, dangerous and unknown region with many problems, and then they come back to their reality. Unfortunately, for me, it looks like this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I will take this into consideration for the next session, definitely. So, thank you, everybody. This table would be the Ukrainian table first with the digital, with the filming. That table would be the Armenian table. This table would be the Georgian table. And we will rotate clockwise with the experts moving.
Where should we? Does it matter who I go with?
Not really, whatever you choose.
Okay, cool.
If we are only a few, maybe we make the circle smaller. Guys.
But we have so this coming
the question was, it's like singing when you are a kid, pretending that you are a popular singer. So this question, how and when did your current festival rise? Political reasons, economical reasons. So I wanted to write this question because actually our festival started in 2014 after the invasion in Ukraine. And it was a difficult year, the war has started, but we decided to make this festival because we had so many so many political and economical changes in the societies we had to respond to, and it was. So it was the reason that the festival came about. Yeah, it was like the tension was rising, and we didn't have many cultural events in our city, and the city was, as we call it, a cultural desert, and. At that point, we decided that's super important to make something, to create, and due to many reasons. So our festival is also about activism, about grassroots initiatives, about people who want to change something, who can gather and do something. And that's interesting point, actually, that after 2014 year, we had a huge development in cultural sphere as well, and social life. And even this crisis made it, sometimes it highlighted some problems and people had to react, but it also made this huge move for development. And even now, when we have the full-scale invasion and full-scale war, many initiatives continue working and making different products, also cultural, because we are talking about culture, and it really provokes people on doing more and more, because we feel this threat and we need to respond. And if we are working in culture, we are doing this in culture.
Which city you talking?
We are situated in Dnipro.
Can you tell a little bit more about the festival?
So the festival, we have it. It's an annual festival, and it's a festival of contemporary and experimental audiovisual art and new media in urban spaces. So we started from using different spaces in the city, which were public previously and, for example, were abandoned, or some not in center, because we also are working with the topic of decentralization. And it's a decentralization in culture because before 2014, everything was main part of cultural events and educational events was situated in Kyiv, and we had almost nothing. So we had to develop our region, and also we had, after 2014, we have a law about decentralization, so more money now accumulated in the regions.
Yes, we do.
We do that. Oh, but
You hear her now?
also,
Did you hear her now?
Mm-hmm.
And are people online?
Yes, people
And we try to make cultural events outside of Kyiv, and many organizations now, so Ukraine is full of different festivals, of film screenings, of many different organizations in different places, and they are still working. So yeah, and we tried, in the beginning, we tried to actualize different, so also it was like decentralization in the city, that not everything should go in the center, but also using infrastructure of other districts.
But where do you get money for it from?
Good question. We are applying for different grants. We don't have full-time funding, but we succeed. Last years we had different sources, so we applied for European grants. For culture, we applied for Ukrainian Cultural Fund. We also had this institution, which also was created after the war has started in 2014 year, and it works really well. It worked before the war, because when the war started, the full-scale war, we had to put money, cultural money, in defense budget, and also we succeed using municipality budget, because it was a real success, and it was the biggest challenge, I would say.
No, I'm asking because I'm also from that region, and when I was studying there and living there was like really cultural desert. It was you only what you could see is Sepehr Sharifzadeh maybe or something like this in opera theater. It was really bad, but now it
From
seems
80s.
that it's changing slowly. Yeah?
Can I ask, what has like the audience, like what is the audience participation in your festival? Because you started when it was not full invasion, and you know there's been 8 years. Is it 8 years now? Sorry. Like, have you seen a change? Have you seen more people come? Are people more active through it? Like, what is the kind of audience feeling around having spaces like this? Is it a space of like where people can express or just take in? I don't know. I just would really like to know how people interact with it.
The audience really changed a lot because the first festival was visited by our friends and our relatives. That's true. On the second festival, we were like, "Do you know that guy?" "No, I don't know." "New guy, we don't know how he get there." And then now, for example, visiting our events, I don't know almost no one because, and also our audience, we have audience from our first festival, and it's like growing with us, and also we have more and more young generation, and also older generation is joining because now we have not only this festival, we have many different projects, and now we have Center for Contemporary Culture in Dnipro, and because we have absolutely different events. We have different audiences for different events, but in general, that's the same audience. We also have educational projects of informal education, and we see quite often, and we are super happy when we can see that our students they are doing their own projects, and that's amazing. But also, I think you should tell about your festival, how it. Because it's a good point to explain the situation.
Yes. Story of our festival is not such a successful story as Masha. Maybe not such interesting because our festival, I am a manager of Kharkiv Music Fest from Ukraine, and our festival, it's a festival about classical music, so it's not so interesting. Yeah.
I think classical music is
Yeah. Our festival was started in 2017, and it was like a private initiative of American conductor who was born in Kharkiv. It's Stanislav Khristenko, and he founded businessman who was interested to doing something good in our city. So now we have a board of our patrons, sponsors, who give us money to make our festival. And maybe the main point to do this was before the war was to make bridges between Europe and Kharkiv. But now everybody changed in Kharkiv. Our team changed, our audience changed, and I think we should do something a little bit different. And it was a good question on yesterday's session about what should festival do, challenges or bring joy, and I think we should do both of it. We should light some problems that we have, some issues, some challenges, and yes, we should give people joy because people in Ukraine and people in Kharkiv really need it.
Just a quick question. I just realized I knew you from online, not from Lisbon. That I realized that because with the sponsor. So it means that there is a good sponsorship net you could achieve, which is actually wouldn't be achieved even by many of us in other parts of Europe. So it's like really outstanding, I guess. And actually, yesterday we had a really lively conversation on what programming of contemporary and classical music should mean. So I guess you two have something together to perhaps to develop on programming side, and. Of course, it's kind of a ridiculous question in this situation, but what kind of prospects and what your plans are for the next 1 year, perhaps? So would you try to do some online events, or would you try for any offline things?
Thank you for this question. Actually, yes, we can't planning anything in Kharkiv because it's very close to the front line, and it's like crazy. We would be crazy to invite people in Kharkiv. So yes, doing something offline in Kharkiv is definitely not our plans. And now we are planning to do something with our partners that we find in this summit, and it was a great opportunity to us to meet all of you. So I already have some festival managers that I meet here, and we are starting to communicate with our plans to doing something in Europe, because it's for us is good opportunity to tell our story.
Is it like an off-site Kharkiv festival would be?
What is off-site?
Like not somewhere else, exile. Like Haldina, for example, what I would think of like to find a venue in Budapest and hold your festival in exile, let's say, offline.
Yes, something like this.
If there are some grant opportunities, let's say some European or and plus governmental.
For this year or for the future?
Well, if you don't have such invitation yet, I guess it's not realistic to it until December at this point. But yeah.
For us in Ukraine, it's very hard to plan in like for months, years, and something like this. So we are talking like this concert season, and for now we are planning to do something in like in spring or maybe next autumn.
I have more of sorry. Okay, yeah, you can go.
Do you think you have the sponsors still after this period?
No. Our sponsors was local sponsors, so they have their own problems with business. It's first reason, and second reason that they spend money for some humanitarian aid. So now I think this concert season we won't have sponsors' money. But we want to work, and now we work as a volunteer in our festivals because we feel that it's important for people in Ukraine and in general.
And how is it for you and your festival in this sponsor situation?
So we don't have governmental support because all funds are redirected to military defense and humanitarian aid. Also, we don't have local support now because also due to this reason. So we can only apply for European grants. And also we have a support in cultural center. We renewed our cultural events because we worked as a humanitarian hub. Did different activities, and from the middle of the summer we started doing cultural events again, and now we have support from USAID fund from the USA, till the end of this year, and this is for the cultural center. And for festival, we for now we don't have anything, but we are planning for the next year.
Yeah, I've just a general question. When the war started, there was a big debate in everywhere, but mainly I know of in Belgium and in Germany about whether one should boycott Russian music and arts and artists. And I know it's a delicate subject, of course, but that's also the reason I would like to pose the question: how do you deal with this now?
Yes, thank you. That's a really good question. So first of all, we are not we are not taking part together with Russian, even not because now they are not allowed to participate in, for example, in European events, but we are not taking part together with Russian organizations, even those who stated against war. Only few organizations and artists, but the main problem is that Russia, even it's not the commonly known idea of colonialism like it was with Western Europe, for example, but during the Soviet times and during when Russia was an empire, they used all these regions as colonies, and to get some supplies, to get food, and to get also cultural, and to get also people, talented people, scientists. So in many levels, in many cases, and also getting funds from these regions, and. We suffered for many years, and now why we want to present ourselves, because we want to talk from ourselves, not as part of former Soviet Union, not a part of this region, not a part of anything else, because we are independent country, and now we are again fighting and dying to not to prove, because we are independent. We have our huge culture, but we want to show and to show it and to present it separately without Russia.
Oh, sorry.
Maybe I'll also shortly comment on that. So I represent Ukrainian Institute. Okay, I represent Ukrainian Institute. We are working in the cultural diplomacy field, and we also were asking our partners from the world to boycott Russian culture. This was based on the feedback that we received from the art professionals from Ukraine, cultural workers and artists. First point is that I agree with Maria, is that it is important for Ukrainians to have this platform to express themselves, and not other representatives to be talking instead of Ukrainians. And the other point is that all attempts of reconciliation right now are considered by Ukrainian art professionals inappropriate, because during this active phase of war, while Russia is still bombing Ukrainian cities and Ukrainian museums are being robbed and many artifacts are taken to Russian museums to be exhibited, we consider it we do not believe in reconciliation, and we would ask at this moment to give Ukrainians this platform to express for themselves while the war is continuing and people are being killed.
What I can add from what I observe, I'm quite connected to Ukraine by my family, is that a lot of artists in Ukraine cannot work right now. Simply because there is no possibility. The men are doing, partially they go to the front, partially they do humanitarian aid. So the artistic practice is a wide zone. It's not there. And the other side, art pieces are destroyed. So there will be less. But what is happening at the same time, the engagement of artists and cultural workers in this crisis will have, of course, a repercussion on the artistic practices later, because now the social engagement is so high that one can expect after the war a very engaged cultural scene, maybe more than ever anywhere, or also finally we can breathe out and we are not threatened to death and we can do art. And this is a moment we have to watch very carefully, and it is highly interesting, in that sense interesting, that in the Western European perspective, art often is distanced in a way. It is more, it's a profession, and it's beautiful and it is important. It's a niche. It is amazing, but there's not often a direct line with survival, with what happened actually with your family, with your friends, with the infrastructure, because infrastructures are there forever, at least in certain countries. So there's no renewal. And now this is if museums are robbed, what will happen with those cities? They will make new culture, new kind of networks, maybe more to the point of today's needs, of today's regional needs. And that is something we forget. There is no artistic practice right now, almost died.
Just to add a comment, I think this is what we can help with together as a EFA community. Not to forget that, as we could see from the experts, that all funds, cultural funds, were used now for humanitarian aid, understandably, and then it would go for reconstruction. And as usual, we are with culture with the last ones, that perhaps we have to try to promote at as many places as possible, to provide as many European or even perhaps even EFA funds for making this happen, because actually this would be a really prosperous and nice future you lined up in order to have the new cultural initiatives coming back to those places which were robbed out of its culture, but I think they need us for that as well.
No. Sepehr said that I followed. You follow your ex. I follow? I gotta go.
Bye-bye. See you later.
Audrey, could we have the second round of questions, like just the guidance questions?
No, the experts move.
She's an expert.
Our whole table is expert. She's not an expert. She's just following the session. And
I think you can stay with us.
no, she has to go.
She has to go.
But she follows her expert.
Yeah, I'm not an expert. That's why you're staying.
No, she
She
follows her expert. I know. I've been briefed by Sepehr. She needs to follow the person that she was with.
I'm an expert in cooking.
She's the boss.
Sorry, it looks like a secret service. It is a secret service. Sepehr, Tobile does not know what to do. She needs to follow her expert, right?
Which are the funding bodies in your region that would boost traditional
No, but we lost so many people.
Yes.
We
yes,
are
because you had 4 or 5
depopulated.
experts. Now we have
too
one
many
expert from
presenters.
Georgia.
And they move to another group.
Great, so you're our expert.
Welcome, expert.
Thank you.
Teach us something.
Yes, teach us.
No, I don't think that experts can teach. They can only share.
Share.
Okay.
It's why this is
You have to talk in the
this is not teaching sessions.
Oh yeah, for the experts, you have to talk into the microphone.
Yes,
because we are recorded.
Because it's being recorded and broadcasted. And I'm gonna take a picture of the questions.
Is recording.
I have a picture of the questions.
Oh, you have a picture. You are amazing. Thank you.
I am.
It's like, I'm so happy you bring that up.
Yeah.
So
maybe we just to use our time or better just briefly tell me.
Don't forget to speak in the microphone.
Yeah.
If not online, we cannot follow.
Okay. Are you here? Because I don't know if you hear.
Switch on.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Except the brochure.
Nice.
To speak in it so that the online.
Yes. Okay. Maybe just briefly tell me, present yourself.
Okay. I am. Yes. I am Wart from the Flanders Arts Institute. I'm the EFA hub from Flanders. I will just pass on the mic, like a rapper.
Yes, I'm Peter from Sweden, Sweden Festivals.
I'm Lee Anseng from the Holland Festival.
I am Benjamin from the Antwerp Spring Festival.
I'm Inge from the Festival Academy.
I'm Tomislav from Music Biennale Zagreb Festival of Contemporary Music.
I'm Natalia from the Valley of Arts Hungarian Festival and both the Hungarian Institute in Brussels.
My name is Levan Khetaguri. I'm from Georgia. I'm presenting quite many institutions in Georgia. Also, I presented Dutch Foundation in the region, which is Caucasus Foundation, and we working already 25 years in the region.
Where is it based?
In Tbilisi. It's registered in Amsterdam, but based in Tbilisi because Tbilisi is still natural place for our neighborhood, where is conflicts, which also was during the last days, because we are placed to organize meeting point for all neighborhood. It's why our foundation was created 25 years ago, but still it's actual to use Georgia for meeting point. I present EFA in the region, but same time running festivals and do research work, and I'm actively involved in UNESCO activities, mostly for International Theatre Institute. And I briefly tell you about the festivals which we are run now. This is Children Theatre Festival, and this festival is for children and by children, which means that it's a possibility of the dialogue between let's say amateurs and professionals during the festival. And this festival include many different layers. It includes workshops, meetings, roundtables, and so on. And in the frame of the festival, we start separate book festival, but this is arts and literature for children. And our aim was that to decorate all theater foyers, which are part of festival, with different publishers and special books for children, because before they go to the performance, they have time to go through books and to meet with authors and so on and so on. And third festival which we are doing, it's a movement and dance festival, which is also a combination of workshops, co-productions, residencies, and shows itself. And the aim of this festival was to stimulate contemporary dance, because in Georgia, by the fact we have very strong national dance, which we consider as traditional performing arts form, and competition for national dance with other forms, it's very difficult, because usually children go to dance academy when they are 4 years old. And when they are 5, 6 years, they already start, and then you can't bring them to contemporary dance and so on. It's why this is the tradition. And the funding system which we have in Georgia, it's mostly state system, but on 3 different levels, on federal, regional, and municipal. It's why you can find the festivals which are developed in Georgia. They are focused on municipal level or on regional, or they located in capital, but sometimes the teams from capital, they do festivals in other parts of country. Festivals using sponsorship like everywhere, also international funds and co-productions, and practically the picture of the festivals is very diverse. So starting from the classical forms to a lot of contemporary forms, and a lot of people are involved. Different festivals have different aims, and this is on municipal level, of course, the presence of political ambitions of municipalities, it's high, but not ideology. It's just pragmatic, let's say, economical and branding reason. And maybe on the level of capital city, some festivals have also the political aim just to branding the ruling party and their presence in funding and so on. This is very general what we have, and I can respond on you.
Can you repeat again what you said, what the main mission was of the 3 festivals that you lead?
Yes, our festivals have very pragmatic mission because we focused a lot on youth development, and our aim was to bring youth to the theater and to develop them as a future audience, because this dialogue between the generations through festivals, it's very important. And we aimed such kind of education and enlightenment, which is very important. It's why sometimes it's not so important to looking for quality, but to looking for logical dialogue between production and the audience. It's why, for example, during Children Festival, this year we have quite many Iranian productions, and the one story was very interesting. We have Iranian puppet show, and we decide not use any translation because the audience is 5, 6 years old or less. Subtitles not reasonable. What we will do? Yes.
I mean, if they dance stars at 4, then they should be.
No. Yes, and there was a 3-4-year-old kid, and when the performance starts, they ask each other, "What's the language?" And one who was older said, "It's Chinese." And continue watching.
Fantastic.
I think this is, for us, it was quite interesting experience because giving young audience possibility to watch performances on the different languages, this is already a very good chance to give them access that they are in diverse world. For them, the languages must be not something, let's say, dangerous, because when they don't understand. And I think this is also stimulation for the tolerance and understanding they are not only in the world.
And on a more meta level, what are the biggest challenges for Georgian festivals now? Not only for the kids festivals, but I mean, we talked, or we are going to talk about sustainability, etc. So, what are the main challenges in your country?
I think this is absolutely same as everywhere, because any economical development in the country, it has a direct impact on the festivals on a different level, because first of all, from funding, and secondary, with the possibility of the audience to buy tickets. And this is quite logically related, which is, for us, when we do children festival, this is free. And we did not sell tickets because this is not our aim. We did not make money, because for us, investment to attend performances more important than just to make some money from it. But generally for big festivals, of course, any economical changes worldwide have direct impact, because Georgia, you know, it's a transit country, and one of the biggest transit country, not with sizes, but with location, because let's say, and now with war in Ukraine, it means that everything what was used to go through Russia and Ukraine, it goes through Georgia to the Black Sea and then to all European Union. Georgia historically was part of Silk Road. And of course, any economical changes in surrounding countries, it's have a direct impact on the national currency, on the funding, because, for example, the budget of the festivals, it's on logically with national currency, yes. And when you have the inflation, you have still same amount, but less possibility. And this is big problem for many festivals. In Tbilisi, in capital, we have a few quite big theater and music festivals. And according to last few years, I can follow that they now limited the days and they limited of participants, because with the amount which they have, they can do more. And of course, this is, I don't think that it's exceptional. I think it's everywhere is the same. And we can say that in some country might be something new. We are part of the global processes, and now it's very difficult to find that somewhere can be a little bit different.
Does anybody want to ask something, or can I ask a question? No, I was just wondering, because you were talking about that before the 90s, the Russians used culture as a way of soft power and occupying. Your festivals now in Georgia are mainly state-funded, so I wonder what are their policies, and do you also have the feeling that there is a certain agenda behind it, or do you feel that you are free as festivals?
I can tell you that something like more than 90% of the festivals have not any political context, because till now, no, there is no context, because for our politicians, art and festival still not so important to use it. They just gave funds, and then it might be more important negotiations just to raise more budget or less budget, but it's not a tool for them, because they are busy with some other things.
Do they limit you in any way, or is there any, or are festivals then are their topics political?
No.
If it's not linked to the state, but like as a festival in itself, relating to the global world, related to the war in Ukraine, are festivals responding to these issues?
Yeah, I can tell you that starting from the war, there was a lot of festivals and actions supporting the Ukraine. I can't say that there was special programming, because from February till autumn there is not too much activity. But for example, we have the special program in our children festival, because in Georgia we have the refugees, and with the number of the refugees we opened Ukrainian school, we organize few street shows for children. But till now I can tell you that we have a lot of separate actions dedicated to Ukraine. It's ongoing. It's in different cities, because for us war in Ukraine, it's very similar to have war in Georgia, because we are, and a lot of Georgians in Ukraine take part in war. There is one Georgian battalion, and also, if you know this famous Azov warriors, they all trained by Georgian instructors. Yes, we are in a very, let's say, center of it.
And what kind of international ties could you build up? What would be something that EFA could provide the Georgian festivals, or like EFA community? What kind of meaningful ties we could build up?
You know, one of our aim when we start more close cooperation as EFA Hub, we try to develop so-called Euro-Asian cooperation, and we are working with Catherine for last few years to develop this idea. First of all, we working on a project like EFA Plus, which means that we would like to invite countries who are outside of European Union border in EFA label program. It's why we call EFA Plus, and in this regard we think to invite India, China, Iran, the countries who have quite interesting activities in the field of festival, but not known for European colleagues. Because I can tell you that last 5 years I was working in China mostly. Of course, I'm traveling, and in China I'm consulting few projects, and two of them, this is very interesting new trend. This is in China, the new activities are to build cities. but this is art cities. And one is theater city where I was involved, and another is China Opera City. Yeah, we have joke, we call that this is art Disneyland. But I can tell you that the content behind the cities are very interesting because it's focused on tangible and intangible heritage, but everything is applied. For example, even if you go to calligraphy museum in this city, you can try yourself make calligraphy. If you go, for example, in a tea house, you can try yourself to prepare the tea. And one interesting thing what I find in China, what they created, this is karaoke, but for theater. You can go into the stage with instructors. They help you to make makeup, to go to the Chinese traditional dress, and they help you to imitate the, let's say, China opera, some pieces. And in this regard, I think that the cooperation with such kind of initiatives in Asia for European festival makers are very important. It's why I think that EFA Plus, it's very important for such kind of dialogue, because for us, the first layer when we talk about China, this is of course a political problem, but in this case, if we don't develop the dialogue between the colleagues, it will be for a long time, because I don't think that political agenda in China will be changed for next decades. And for this reason, you can find that you can create in China anything, any cultural project, any activities, only you don't need to touch political issues. And another interesting practice, I think, for Europeans is that in China, when people became billionaires, first what they do, they started sponsorship to the arts. Because the cities, for example, what I tell you, it's a private, let's say, business of billionaires. This is all private funds. This is not state funds. And of course, it's developed very well. Local tourism, for example, what we discussed in EFA cities, and cultural tourism and festivals and tourism. China exceptional because they don't need international tourism. The internal tourists covered everything. Even it's not enough seats in the theaters, not enough seats in cinema at all. But I think all this development of these local cities, it's wonderful example how festivals and cities can develop local economy, because these cities working like four-season festivals.
I just a comment here that I even wouldn't thought of what your answer, because when I asked, I thought that we are going to talk about European collaborations. But it's so
Thank you, everybody, again.
It means that Georgia might
I would like to invite you to change your tables, the experts.
Hi, everyone. So we're reassembling. This is an opportunity to meet our Armenian colleagues. Before we begin, I think it would be good very briefly for everyone to introduce themselves, so we know the international visitors, what our context is, what our country is, just very briefly, like 5 seconds each, and also for the Armenian colleagues, just to let us know who you are and what your organization is.
I'm Benjamin Hamhout. I'm representing the Antwerp Spring Festival. We do classical and contemporary music as well as contemporary dance.
Emily Anseng from the Holland Festival, the oldest festival interdisciplinary in the Netherlands, 75 years old. Yeah, that's it.
I'm Martin Tovmasyan, Development Director of Armenia State Symphony Orchestra. We have 4 festivals, but only one festival, Khachaturian International Festival, is a member of European Festival Association. Thank you.
Peter is my name, and I represent
Swedish Festivals Association.
We need this?
Yes, so just to explain to everyone, there are people listening to this session online, so we can speak normally, but this is so that the people listening online can hear us.
My name is Sona Hovanesyan. I'm General Manager of Yerevan Perspectives Music Festival and founder and president of Haya Festival. Thank you, but it doesn't work.
No, it does work. It's not to amplify us, it's so the people online can hear us.
Okay, I'm Ani. I'm working for the Armenian State Symphony Orchestra as the International Relations Officer and also representing Khachaturian International Festival. Thank you.
I'm Wart Bosmans from the Flanders Arts Institute, and we are the Flemish EFA hub.
Hi, my name is Danica. I'm composer, artist, artistic director of Remuzica Festival in Kosovo, but also a project coordinator for EFA project here in EFA.
Hello, I'm Arthur Gukasyan. I'm head of High Fest International Performing Arts Festival. This is the flagship theater festival in Armenia, and we are EFA laureates for 2019-21.
Hi, I'm Natalia. I'm representing the Valley of Arts, a great festival from Hungary. And actually, I'm chairing as well a Hungarian touristic program organization, which is coordinating all the events held in Hungary, whether it would be cultural, business, or sports events.
Hi, I'm Tomislav from the Croatian Composer Society. We have several festivals, and our Music Biennale Zagreb, which is 62 years old, is member of EFA, and we are also the EFA hub for Croatia.
I'm a general producer of the Armenian National Philharmonic Orchestra. Our orchestra is 96 years old. The festival is celebrating its 15th season next year, and we have various educational and illuminating programs for Armenian society, also visiting cities outside Yerevan, visiting Gyumri, Artsakh. So this is a very important part of our strategy.
Great. So just to be clear with everyone, we're using the microphones not to amplify ourselves in the room. It's only so people listening online can hear us. Okay. So we should just make sure that it's on. It's just so people listening online can hear us. So briefly, some things that I have learned in the last 40 minutes about Armenia to summarize. That many the organizations represented here are a mixture of state organizations and private NGOs. Many of the organizations started around 20 years ago. The orchestra is slightly different. It's been around for almost 100 years, but many of the institutions are about this age, and for many of them there was a period where it was very difficult, and then there was government funding, and now government funding is not so much of a priority anymore. There isn't a full culture ministry. Culture is less of a priority. We spoke about how there is international funding, or just despite the lack of government funding, there's not a lot of government interference, so the organizations feel quite free in terms of the programming that they're doing. There is international funding from embassies, from international foundations. One of the main founders is the International Armenian Diaspora Foundations, particularly the Armenian General Benevolent Union, which has a presence in 100 countries. We find there isn't, for example, a tax deduction for culture. So while the rich of Armenia are buying paintings and kind of supporting certain kinds of culture, investing in festivals is less of a priority. I guess Armenia finding itself in a difficult position where it's not benefiting from bigger European grants, partly because of bureaucracy, partly because of a sort of position of being stuck between two worlds and needing to have a relationship with Russia for national security reasons, which then complicates the relationship with Europe. So those are just some of the things that we've learned so far. And we have another set of questions to discuss, which I'm just going to read out, and then we can discuss whichever of those are interesting for us. So what are the local and regional challenges in programming and organizing festivals? Some of these have come up already, but we're speaking to a new group, so we can share maybe some things we've spoken already. What is safety for you? And how much impact does safety have on your festival programming and organizing? This could be thinking about COVID, about climate, about war. Is there an artwork or a play or a show that really emblematizes your festival, that really touched your soul, that really impacts the way you navigate in your festival? It's interesting for us to learn about particular artworks that are representative for you. What is it that you're afraid of when you're doing a festival? And what is the conversation that it is a lot. What is the conversation that we're still not having that you want to have? Yeah, so maybe to hear from our colleagues in Armenia a response to any of those things. What is safety? What is safety? What is an artwork that's emblematic? Any of those. When you think about safety, yeah. We need to speak on the. Actually, can we? I'll keep this. Yeah. No, take the microphone. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah. Thank you.
I simply wanted to have a clarification behind the word safety.
I think the question is, what does it mean for you? So when you think about safety in relation to your festival, how does it impact your thinking? Yeah, but I think the question is for you to define that. You don't have to answer it if you don't have an answer.
No, I have the answer that safety means also when you are financially secure. For example, if you are scheduled your budget 5 years ahead, if you are able to have this money and invite all these artists, okay, it's possible to realize that from financial point of view. Also, there is a safety when you are able to travel anywhere in this country and to the region without being attacked by your neighbor.
And is that possible right now? Those the two things, the financial safety and the safety in travel?
Safety in travel is now on the threat. For example, at the end of the month, I had a scheduled plan to go to Martakert. It is in the Republic of Artsakh for the festival there. We had a conversation yesterday, and they said that let's wait a little bit until the situation will be sorted out, because now to travel there is unsafe.
Mm. And what about the financial safety? Do you have this 5-year planning possibility?
5-year planning is actually requested even from our Ministry of Culture. They say present us your plan for 5 years ahead, but it does not necessarily mean that this plan will be approved and the funds will be granted. For the private organization, it is even more difficult because they are like hunters seeking for funds elsewhere. Whilst as a national orchestra and the state organization, at least I have this possibility to apply for a state grant. Is it a travel grant? Is it an institutional grant for development of the organization, for example, instruments purchase? And of course, it's a programmatic budget when you are actually able to invite top artists to your festival. Top artists this year already increased their fees. The fees doubled, tripled after COVID, probably you know this.
I liked all your 4 questions.
Yeah.
I want to answer them quickly.
Great, please do.
So the first was about programming challenges. Yeah, I remember we had challenge when we were presenting totally modern music here. We did it like 20 years ago in regions, in far regions. They were listening to Xenakis, very, very contemporary music.
These guys.
Yeah, yes. And we were chasing their orchestra to play it. So it was historical. You know, it was historical moment.
Let's keep the conversation on the microphone just because people are listening.
How people loved it, how people accepted it. It was a huge challenge and educational and enlightening process, which I will never forget, this contemporary music. And then we started a series of contemporary composers. And then we had, in the end, such a huge full house. And our European colleagues were surprising. Is really your young generation listening to Penderecki 5 days with full house? It was incredible, but it was a challenge we went through. And ask.
So are there artists or artworks that are really emblematic of your festival? Can you talk about
our emblem? The three small people gathered around the tree. It has taken thousands of years ago symbol. It's an eternity tree. It's very special symbol, and we use it in gold and black. I mean, it also symbolizes perspectives in a friendship, in mutual understanding of different nations, different cultures. So our symbol of perspectives, it does mean totally the same.
And is there a contemporary artist or a contemporary artwork that you feel really defines what you do?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not.
What are you afraid of when you're making a festival?
Well, afraid of losing hope. Afraid of being disappointed, because that's the end. We do try, and that's the main driving force. Never being disappointed and never give up.
And what do you do to keep that hope alive?
To be always positive, think positive, never allow negative to come so close. And that helps. It might sound quite unrealistic, but it helps.
What about one of our other Khachaturian festival, or Arthur in the performing arts?
I agree with my colleagues. I agree with also about the safety. For example, yes, Arman is right, financial, because the Ministry of Culture the huge ministry, blah blah of something, and they, for example, announced 3 years ago or something, it would be like in foundation. You should apply, and then, for example, 6 months before, you will understand how big will be sum that you will get. It's impossible. I mean, you can't. It would be funny to say to people, I don't know, to Fergus Linnea, to say that Fergus, like it would be helping. That you're in Edinburgh, you'll find out for 23 now the budget for 23. Of course, it's impossible, and but we want to take high because this is high fest. They like it, but this is safety, and safety about the situation. Totally agree about the yes, hope, the discouragement and gloom. We're afraid of that, and because you understand all the time thinking that only I need a theater festival in this country like this, but it's not. How for example what will be the vaccine of that? The antibodies of such meetings. We're getting antibodies for that, and we're just saying yes, it's great. Or spectators and our friends and our colleagues, they say, Arthur, you did great work, your team, and something like this.
Can you tell us about, is there an artwork or a performance that you've shown recently that for you really defines what you're trying to do?
You know that it was during, also it connects to another question, during the COVID time, and there was a war, and it was the first time that we postponed the festival and to December, and we organized a huge super conference with EFA online, and there were our colleagues, and they, for example, the same Schaubühne, and they releases us the possibility to show their premiere online, which is impossible to imagine because, of course, you know how to talk with Thomas or with Tobias about that, and they said yes, because we will support you with that. And also the last year when it was hybrid type of the festival, but we had this VR everything, and also work with Garbachevsky, with different Kirill Serebrennikov, for example, them, and also the people, our colleagues, they are ready and happy to help us to make things possible via this, and telling us that please use our name when you talk to different, for example, when I talk to Krzysztof Arlikovsky and something, even if they would say, we don't know what will be in the end, will there be possibility enough money to come, but use my name when you'll talk to Adam Mickiewicz Institute, for example. This is, it worth a lot, really.
Can I correct something in what I said?
Of course, please do.
When you said artwork, my mind was in other place. Artwork is like logo design for me.
And
Now I
okay.
realize that I got answer only for the design. Yes, Yerevan Perspectives has its major, like you can identify with contemporary music series of living composers, which we do, and also series of. And it's our major to bring once a year at least one of the greatest orchestras of the world to Armenia. This is only thing which identify everyone. We brought already like 10-12 big orchestras of the world, and also something which we always do, that series of great performers like Verbia does, greatest pianist, greatest. I mean, we are having Kisin, Pogorelic, such kind of series which we can present as a highest artistic criteria we follow. I talked about only logo. Artwork for me now is logo. Thank you.
Do we still have time?
Of course, we have time until they come dragging us out of our chairs.
So talking about challenges, so today we are experiencing one of them, because of the situation we had yesterday. So today we have a concert in the framework of Armenia International Festival, and so we are negotiating whether we need to do it or not to do it. So it's a big challenge, and for me, safety is stability. Stability, first of all, to have a safe country, to have safe borders. Second comes the financial issue, of course. So we need to get the support to create and to implement the project we do. So many interesting. And just quickly talking about the last question, talking about fears. For me, just personally, my biggest fear is just having generations which will lose interest in classical music, because all we do is related to classical music mostly, and we do huge work. We make huge efforts just to involve more and more, to make our audience bigger and bigger each year with every concert. So my fear is that, but we do everything not to let this happen. So,
is there a conversation that we're not having? Is there something that that you're not talking about here, or is there something that we're not asking you about, or is there a conversation that you wish we were having that hasn't happened yet?
I'm a new person in this field. I'm only 2 years in classical music, specialist for international relations. But what
we can keep going. We're going to keep going until they tell us to stop.
What I understood in this field, we have lack of communication between stakeholders, between Armenian stakeholders, between our partners, between our colleagues, between the national level and NGOs.
If you can speak into the mic, just so people can hear you.
Can I get the mic for Sepehr, because we're now finishing the session? Sorry.
Thank you, everybody, for your time and contribution. So for the last part, we were planning on something a bit probably different, but now we are improvising because we are a bit short on time. The last part was supposed to be the experts being here and talking along with the alumni of the Festival Academy about their takeaways, conclusion, impacts, results, and learnings that they had from their tables. But to have, like, let's say 5 to 10 minutes, I will go to each table with the cameraman. These are the questions. You can talk about these questions, like one of them, you can focus on one of them and your experience from that during the tables that you change. So the questions, just for those of you who cannot watch them, one of them is, what surprising, shocking, intriguing thing did you learn about? What did you feel afterward? What might you like to explore now about the region, this socio-political, geopolitical region? Do you already think about a collaboration with them? Is there any topic, subject, notion that clung to your mind for the future? And if yes, what is it? Has it changed your mindset on the words you chose for this geopolitical region at the beginning of the session? And the last question would be, how can we share the learning from this experience? So I will go first to this table, and then I will go move clockwise.
Hi, everyone. Maybe I'll just summarize a little, and then it would be good to hear from one or two people from the group. For sure, but really briefly, just a couple of things. Just as we were cut off there, it seemed like there was a lack of communication within the sector here in Armenia, and I wonder whether something like this might be an opportunity for the beginning of a kind of Armenian Festivals Association or some kind of platform for the Armenian organizations to engage with one another, because it sort of felt a little bit like this conversation was happening here for the first time. I think something that I found shocking and that I hadn't really thought about was this position and that Armenia finds itself between two worlds, and it's sort of reflected in the difficulty of getting major European funding for projects here because of the national security implications in terms of the relationship with Russia. And so for us to think about how we might help and work with Armenian organizations to increase the support that they're getting from Europe, not in a way that compromises their national security, but I guess, yeah, how these conversations can continue. And yet to discover more Armenian artists, which we got to talk about a little bit, and to share them. Is there anything else briefly from the group? Anyone maybe from Armenia? Anyone who's been listening? Yeah, but those are just some of the things.
Very briefly, we read a lot about all these wars and these conflicts, and today what struck me really was someone actually saying that it's really actually dangerous to travel, and you have to really be afraid for your life. That really struck me, to really see you in the eyes and hear you say that. It's a big difference for me, so thank you for sharing.
Thank you very much. And now we go to this table with Inge and Yerevan representing Georgia.
Thank you. I think also we had like 3 very different conversations, going more in depth. I think what is interesting to learn about Georgia is that, of course, you had like this 200 years occupation of Russia. So after the 90s, it really shifted the whole way of working, and also I think the developing of a sort of identity, which is actually still quite recent, and also to understand that Russian culture was actually kind of propaganda for a Russian imperium in which a lot of different people lived, which we call today Russian, but are not necessarily Russian. So there is a question of what is Russian culture actually. We talked a lot about the role of art and festivals in educating and enlightening people. There's in Yerevan's work, there's a very strong focus on youth, which is also a different generation today. So it's like people in Georgia are now, the young people are English speaking, Western focused. So they don't necessarily have also the knowledge of this history with other countries. There was also the thing that changes economically worldwide impact immediately, of course, on Georgian festivals and on international collaborations. The importance of dialogue with other, there's a priority on working within the region with countries as Azerbaijan and Armenia, etc., to share art, the importance of bringing art to other contexts. But also there is this, I learned about this initiative EFA+, where Georgia is trying to make, together with EFA, connections to countries like China, Iran, India, which are outside of the European Union, and which could really be a very interesting exchange, both on the level for European festivals and the other festivals, to learn about very innovative projects like in China, these art cities that are being created. So I think, yeah, that's kind of what I took away from it, and there's a lot of curiosity that I feel to learn more, because it's a very short time, 3 times 20 minutes to discover that. So I don't know if you want to add something, Devon.
Anybody from the Thank you, Inge. Thank you, Levan. Now we go to the table dedicated to Ukrainian festivals and Tobile.
Hi, everyone. I'm an emotional person, so this might get a little bit crazy. It was a learning, I think, for me, to hear about the Ukrainian situation as a whole, because I just think distance-wise, we're so far apart. And I think the trauma that South Africa has experienced is still something that's very real for us, and so we're sometimes very into our own selves. So it was really interesting to learn from you that this kind of started in 2014, whereas I think in my country we all think that this is a very recent and new thing. Oh, stand up. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. I also don't want to have my back to people. Sorry. And now I've left my phone, so it's just going to go off the top of my head. So to learn that this started in 2014 was a surprising thing. I think what was quite touching for me is to see the different groups react and everybody get quite emotional. In every single group that I was with, there was a moment where I saw teary eyes, and genuinely teary eyes, which I think is not a good thing, but it's nice to know that people feel, because sometimes it feels like people aren't there with us. I think one of the words that for me definitely changed is when we spoke about what words come to mind when we think about this geopolitical place. I definitely put down war. And after hearing you guys speak, I now think independence, resistance, persistence. And yes, you can do it. We did it, so you can do it. In terms of kind of, sorry. It was really also very touching to, especially in the first group, that people wanted action. Like there was action points that almost came out at the end of it, and an acknowledgement that the independence that Ukraine is seeking must not be a thing that gets exported, but must return home. And so I think I'm going to stop there, otherwise I'm not going to be able to speak any further. So I hope that's enough. Is that enough? Anybody want to? Oh, one last thing, actually, and it's the trauma thing. I know that we're all creatives and we work in a creative space, but I think to be empathetic to the fact that processing is a huge part of how we express ourselves, and so to allow people to have the time to kind of let things settle, because we begin to create a thing of what in our country have started to call pain pornography, where people are desperately wanting to see the pain of South Africans. We want to find a place of joy at some point. So as cultural curators and programmers and festival makers, please be sensitive to that, is that yes, when they are ready, they will, and they are already expressing, but sometimes to constantly be wanting a product is very, very violent.
Speaking on behalf, many regions and countries, for me, a golden word is, and I talk it now from the perspective of Ukraine, nothing about us without us.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Yurian. That's great. Nothing without us, about us. Nothing about us without us. Perfect. Thank you, everybody. I really hope we managed to give you a small window of a different narrative, and I hope we all carry what we learned through all these days and through this session today. So please, bon appetit, enjoy the lunch, and the next session would begin.
Just a second. I want to give one big applause to Sepehr, who has conceptualized this session, who has in his introduction, offered himself as well as a person with the bagage he is carrying as an individual to us and with us. Like all of us here in these little circles, I think that needs courage, and that needs empathy, and it needs listening. And I think all this, what we hear in the voices when they start to show the emotion and when the hands start to shake, is these moments when, now you refer to it, Benjamin, that stick to our minds, because this is what I think we are here for, to really offer and share ourselves as individuals, not maybe as countries or not maybe as regions or not as geopolitical entities, but really as individuals. And that's the strength, I think, and the power of these conversations that are happening here in Yerevan. And I'm very, very grateful for that you all took this path with us. Yes, we have lunch now. We are a little bit late. It's 1:15 now. We would invite you. Lunch is upstairs again in the, what is it called? Italia? La Cucina, in the La Cucina restaurant.
We have one question online, and it's important to listen also to the people that are following this session online.
Okay.
Maybe we can take it.
Can we show the people on the screen that are joining us or that are with us? Arut, you are online with us and you would like to share from the online community. We can't see you yet. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, we can hear you.
Okay, great.
Go ahead.
First of all, thank you very much for this great presentation. It's really amazing to get so much information in this short period of time. I have one small question. We have some musicians who play extraordinary programs, and we would like to ask about the possibility to make a contact with different festivals, you know. And as far as I understand, can you please describe how we can do that?
Okay, we get the question. We will pass through information. I don't think we can immediately reply right now, but there's many festivals here around, and we are looking forward to getting your information to spread it. Is that okay?
Yes, maybe you can share your email or something that it's possible to contact you.
We will follow this up. Thank you very much for following us online.